All right, y'all look at the thumbnail. Y'all see the title. And today, yes, we got Zoom, and this is our dire wolf going to become OP again. I don't know, but let's hear what he got to say on this. You know, I like how he do his little thing to edit. It's like video games and stuff. So I'm here for everything. Let's go.
It's all over the news. Outside's modding community has successfully managed to mod the direwolf back into the game as a playable character again. While obviously this announcement generated a ton of discourse.
So, are we cool? Hey, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Around the scientific and ethical implications of resurrecting extinct characters from previous balance patches. What I want to discuss is the potential impact this could have on the competitive metagame. Just how overpowered was the dire wolf back during the Ice Age? And where are they most likely to place on the tier list in the current meta? First, let's discuss the direwolf's base stats.
See, I got to see what type of wolf are. I remember a while back, bro. It was late night. I'm driving, bro. Traffic light. I seen some. It was like a big wolf. I couldn't really see it because I just saw like black, and it ran, but then it ran back into like that with all that field. It, bro. I'm like, man. But and then crazy because I know some people ain't gonna believe it. That's why I wish I had it recorded. Now, cause now I feel like I believe those people who say, you know, Yetis and barefoot and they real now. I believe them now, bro. I saw it was a huge, like, tall wolf. It ran, but then it ran back. And I'm like, ain't no one gonna believe me, bro, that I saw that. So that's why I say, yeah, I believe the other people who say they believe in Yetis and Bigfoot, aliens. I believe y'all, man. I know ain't no one gonna believe me that I saw a wolf and its tail long. It ran and it ran back. That was crazy. But let's look at it right here. Like, yo, I like this, the dying wolf. Okay, that dying is nasty. Let's go.
The easiest way to do this is to compare them to the gray wolf. So the most obvious difference is their size, as they were on average a solid 40% larger than the gray wolf, which gave them a much higher HP stat. This allowed them to tank hits that would potentially one-shot a modern wolf, a necessity given how powerful their hunting targets were.
Damn.
Their power stat was also significantly higher, even greater than you'd expect based on their increased size alone. Their broader, heavier skulls granted them a dramatically stronger bite force, enough to—
Well, that's a gray wolf I saw then? But it was all black. It ran it dark though. I don't know. I could have that probably, but it was tall and big and like wide.
Easily crack a bone. This is where the direwolf's stats appear.
Because this thing don't look that it don't. But the tail, I remember the tail, but it don't look like. It probably was something like this I saw, but I could be wrong though. I know it wasn't nothing like this. No, sir. It had to be something like this, but like tall and it ran, but then it ran back. Like, how you see that in Georgia? That's crazy. In Georgia? No, sir.
Priority ends though. The direwolf had a lower intelligence stat than modern wolves, on account of their slightly lower brain to body mass ratio.
Do they even exist? I don't know.
Not so low as to preclude them from using pack hunting tactics, but definitely low enough that their ability to sense danger and avoid obvious traps apparently wasn't as sharp. Their legs were thicker and comparatively shorter, making them a bit less nimble and far less capable of distance running than the modern gray wolf. For stealth, the direwolf—
Yeah, I'm trying to see if this was the wolf I saw. I hardly doubt this was the wolf I saw, bro. I know that joker was big. I didn't know it was tall and big, and that thing got height on it. It got size and height on it. So that's all I know. And the tail part was just like this, like dang.
This bright white coat gave it a massive stealth bonus on snowy terrain, but was otherwise a bit worse than the versatile camouflage of the grays and browns of the modern wolf. Their perception abilities were more or less comparable, and the same goes for the defense stat, as both relied on their thick fur as a form of light armor.
Oh, see, which kind of got more speed than that one than on the gray wolf.
As alluded to before, for direwolves, the metagame during the Ice Age was basically constant boss rush mode. Each hunt would center around trying to bring down one of the Ice Age's many behemoths, something like a bison or a giant ground sloth. Their stat spread was excellent for this type of game plan. Their high damage, blood loss inflicting bites, and pack hunting tactics were a devastating counter to the high HP herbivores at the time. Their lower mobility was less of an issue than you might expect, since most of their hunting targets weren't going to run away anyway. That said, even with their boosted HP compared to Grey Wolves, engaging Pleistocene megafauna head-on was extremely risky and could very easily have resulted in getting sent back to your respawn point if you got careless. But the larger issue was the direwolf's matchups versus the other apex predators of the Ice Age. After securing a kill, characters like the short-faced bear and Smilodon would often bully them away from the meat, and could easily delete their entire HP bar if they tried to fight back. Because of this poor matchup spread, direwolves were often forced to eat as quickly as possible, or to wait for the more dangerous players to finish looting before getting to reap the rewards of their own successful hunts. In this scenario,
they just some weak little wimps.
Their incredible bite force had the bonus effect of letting them get more value out of a carcass than other predators could. As even after bears and saber-tooths were finished with it, there would still be plenty of bone marrow available for the wolves. In this regard, the direwolf
but they gotta eat the leftovers.
Has a lot in common with the spotted hyena, being a powerful hunter that can also pivot to a scavenging playstyle whenever necessary. However, even though they have similarly powerful bone-crushing bites, only the hyena spec'd into the specialized durable molars for crunching on bone.
We are not the same, little buddy.
Direwolves have much less specialized teeth, made more for just general meat shearing and inflicting bleed damage. Even with their higher bite force, over-reliance on bone crunching resulted in direwolves burning through the durability of their primary weapon, dulling its effectiveness in future combat scenarios. This was a massive long-term liability, and as a consequence, the direwolf unfortunately had a very low lifespan compared to the grey wolf. But obviously the meta has shifted a lot since the Ice Age. So what would the direwolf's matchup spread look like now? Well, the biggest change between then and now is the lack of megafauna. Gigantism is simply not seen as being necessary in the game's competitive landscape anymore, and so tailoring your character specifically to counter that type of build just isn't that potent of an advantage now. In fact, I would guess that their lower agility would offset any power advantage direwolves would bring to the table. Most of the current meta's key herbivores, like deer, rely solely on speed and perception to survive, and would be very difficult for a slower, bulkier wolf to catch. But with that said, direwolves would have a much easier time protecting any quarry they did manage to bring down. While grizzly bears would of course remain a threat, the matchup is nowhere near as much of a blowout as the short-faced bear was versus direwolves. In fact, even a pack of grey wolves can sometimes hold their own versus brown bears. And the direwolf's main adversary pack of grey wolves can sometimes hold their own versus brown bears.
I saw something like almost something like this though. Well, it was like, bro, that wolf was tall. What I saw, bro, I didn't know it could possibly be something like this or that. I didn't know, bro, the thing was tall, bro, and the tail was long.
Bears.
And the tail was, it was down.
And the direwolf's main adversary, the saber-tooth, has no modern analog in the North America server. Large cats are essentially a non-factor, while mid-sized cats like the puma would be obliterated 1v1. However, the last matchup they need to worry about is a lot more interesting. What would the matchup be like between the direwolf and the grey wolf? On its surface, it might seem like an obvious blowout. Direwolves are more powerful and can take more damage. And sure, in 1v1 combat, I don't think there'd be any doubt which character comes out ahead. But in terms of survival, the equation shifts dramatically. Direwolves were already struggling during the Ice Age. They were a popular pick for sure, but for many of the reasons already discussed, they were no top tier. Their core strategy only works well in a server filled with slow, giant targets. Grey wolves, on the other hand, have much more flexibility in their diet. When the opportunity arises for a pack to come together and bring down a large beast, grey wolves of course can and do rise to the occasion. But because of their smaller stature, they can subsist on smaller prey when necessary. Builds like the rabbit, beaver, and even fish can fill the gaps if there's ever a lack of large prey on the server. Direwolves, in addition to being too slow to reliably catch agile sprinters like rabbits, would not be able to thrive off of that diet. There's a reason that most other large predators function at least partially as generalist omnivores, with a broad skill set that can make use of a wide variety of food sources. Lastly, there's one final major difference between the Ice Age meta and the modern meta, and that is the centralization around the human build. The Grey Wolf is the literal best example in the game of a character that turned the threat of the new top tier into an opportunity, becoming the human's first choice for party member and hunting teammate. This is primarily due to the wolf's intelligence, exemplified by its ability to cooperate. Cooperate with its wolf teammates, cooperate with ravens asking for help chasing away rivals from carcasses, and of course cooperate with humans looking for help guarding their camps and chasing down prey. Direwolves were less cooperative, even with each other. With direwolves being both less intelligent and requiring more food to survive, it's unlikely they'd have ever been able to slot into a human's party. So ultimately, I do believe the wolves already established in the meta will be able to hold their ground against these fearsome Ice Age predators. After all, they did it once before. Grey wolves were added to the game around the start of the Ice Age, and survived through the entire glaciation period and into modern day. There's little reason to expect these resurrected direwolves would fare any better against the tried and true Grey wolf now. Or is there? The fundamental assumption we've been making for this whole video is that these newly modded characters are in fact authentic direwolves. But how exactly did this group of data miners and modders go about reversing the removal of direwolves from the character select screen? You could be forgiven for assuming they simply got their hands on a former direwolf player's old save data, and just copy-pasted the entire thing onto a fresh save file. If they'd done that, I would completely agree that they had indeed re-added the direwolf full stop. But no, if you take a look at the modder's dev blog, it appears their actual methodology was to take the Grey Wolf's game data and edit it to buff the Grey Wolf in a few specific areas, to make it similar in size and power to the original direwolf. Now, whether or not this counts as a true direwolf is kind of up to your own interpretation. If you modded a horse to give it a horn, did you make a rhino? If you modded a beluga whale to give it a tusk, did you make a narwhal? I could kind of see both sides of the argument here, but what I think is more important for our discussion is that these modders don't seem to have programmed in any of the direwolf's former limitations. They buffed the wolf's size and strength, sure. They even gave it a stark white coat, giving it a huge stealth bonus on snowy terrain, similar to the polar bear. But as far as I can tell, they did not nerf its mobility by giving it proportionally shorter legs, nor did they nerf the wolf's intelligence by giving it a proportionally smaller cranial cavity. And this is where I do think there's a genuine risk of these modded characters becoming broken, either in the overpowered sense or legitimately unplayable sense. They could be extremely overpowered, possessing all the advantages of the dire wolf with zero trade-offs. But it's also possible that this modded build is so overtuned that its energy upkeep costs will be completely unmanageable. Brain size in particular is one of those traits that can easily sink a build if the payoff doesn't materialize, as brain size is one of the most calorically demanding traits in the game. The original direwolf player base already ran into this roadblock at the end of the Ice Age, and this was without the increased energy needs of a larger brain. At the end of the Ice Age, the devs patched the game precisely to punish greedy, overtuned builds like this, and it was the compact efficiency of the Grey Wolf, Coyote, and other small carnivores that kept them in the game while the direwolf faced extinction. We may never know which of these extremes ends up being true, as the modders have so far maintained that these superwolves will only be playable on their private server, where presumably their massive energy demands will be met regardless of their viability. Anyway, there's still way too much we don't know about these modded superwolves for me to say for sure whether or not I think they're actually going to be overpowered. Even that bit about their increased brain size is heavily speculative. I don't actually know if the code they edited actually results in increased brain size. From what I can tell, it's at least indirectly tied to brain size, but without directly measuring these superwolves' brain sizes and metabolisms, it's impossible to say for sure. If you or anyone you know is a part of this modding community, I'd love to get in touch. They've been hinting at the possibility of doing something similar for the Mammoth, so I'll try to keep you all updated on the latest modding shenanigans. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Thanks again for watching, and as always, good luck out there.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know what that I had saw. I know I saw something tall. It was tall in a long tail and it ran, but it ran back. Yeah, thanks for the info. You already know. Look at what I shoot, all that good stuff, man. Let's go.